For years, players begged Behavior for another game mode to be added to Dead by Daylight. We'd always gotten event modes, but they were basically just the same game with a slightly different coat of paint. We had Halloween events, Christmas events, summer events, and a few others, but at most they'd add minimal changes to the game. Maybe generators and lockers would look different, maybe there'd be a special interaction with something on the map from time to time, or maybe you'd get special skins from engaging with things that were added. This stuff was all nice, but it didn't really satisfy the need players had for something to really shake up the game. Players begged Behavior to add a mode where two killers could team up and work together to take out a larger group of survivors, but after so much begging, it just never happened. Not only did that desire not come true, but no new game modes were ever added at all. It seemed like Behavior was never going to add a true to form new game mode for Dead by Daylight. Until 2024. We were finally graced with a different way to play the game we all love to hate. And that first game mode was Lights Out. Yeah, Lights Out. Woo, it was pretty dookie. It was basically just Dead by Daylight, but dark. Lights Out didn't really give players the new experience that they desperately wanted. It was nice to have a new game mode, but it didn't take long at all for that game mode to get really boring and stale. The gameplay for Lights Out was just really lacking. The novelty was nice, but after a couple of matches, there wasn't much to really mess around with. In my opinion, the game mode just wasn't fun. As a survivor, you'd stick on a gen for a while and hope that the killer didn't come out of nowhere to slaughter you, and as killer, it was even harder to find players that just hit all game. It lacked a lot of longevity and depth, and nobody was too upset when it left. It seemed like more of a test than a new way to play the game, almost like Behavior wanted to see if adding a new game mode would even work for the foundation of toothpicks that DBD's code is built on. A few months later, Chaos Shuffle came out and was much better received. It took away one of the more annoying aspects of DBD, that of watching players use the same perks over and over again, and forced people to adapt and use random perks that they got whenever the match started. While it is an incredibly simple game mode, even more so than Lights Out, I think that works in its favor. While Chaos Shuffle doesn't change the game, it doesn't really need to. It's simple and fun, just the way it should be. Chaos Shuffle is great, and I'm always hyped for it to come back, even just for the fact that it's nice to use perks I don't normally think about. However, Chaos Shuffle being everybody's favorite game mode didn't last long. Not after we finally got to play Killer with someone else. In July of 2024, a new game mode called 2v8 finally dropped in Dead by Daylight. The name is pretty self-explanatory. Get to queue as killer with someone else, and as survivor, you get 4 more teammates to watch do nothing. While it sounds simple in concept, the execution was actually pretty complex for what it was. Perks, gone. Add-ons, gone. Items, gone. Kind of. Instead, the 2v8 game mode was centered entirely around classes. When selecting your role, being killer or survivor, you are presented with multiple different classes to choose from. As a survivor, you can play as an escapist, guide, medic, or scout, and as killer, you can play as a brute, enforcer, fearmonger, or shadow. These classes give unique benefits to you and your teammates and are, in my opinion, the best way they could have done a system like this. I think keeping the perks, add-ons, and items in 2v8 would have probably been a mistake and also impossible to balance. Instead, you get the best of both here. All you need to do is pick a class and queue, and then the fun begins. Depending on the queue time. Call me crazy, but I honestly believe 2v8 is peak Dead by Daylight. Not only is the game mode insanely fun, but it also harkens back to why classic DBD, circa 2016-2018, still holds a special place in my heart, despite how terrible it was.
If we don't count the Twins PTB, I guess.
We love reliability. What?
Okay.
How on earth did I hit you?
While 2v8 may be far from perfect, we'll get into that later, I think that honestly works to its favor. It reminds me a lot of loading into a game of Dead by Daylight back when it first came out. You see, when Dead by Daylight was rather new, people didn't really queue into games to win and were instead queuing in for the experience. Dead by Daylight still had the reputation of being a horror game where the idea was, oh no, the spooky monster's gonna chase me, better hide, instead of the chase-heavy game that it's become. I get the same vibes from 2v8. People don't care very much about winning in this mode, at least on the survivor side. 2v8 is much more focused on the chaotic fun that Dead by Daylight really shines with. Due to having more survivors and killers, there's so much random nonsense going on that you can't help but have a good time. It's truly an experience I haven't gotten from DBD in ages. Both sides are incredibly fun to play as, which is a miracle considering how much has changed between this game mode and the base game. Survivors in 2v8 sort of run around like chickens without their heads, and are honestly kind of adorable. I assume this is because MMR doesn't work for 2v8. Because killers are significantly buffed in this game mode, it makes it much harder to loop as Survivor, even with the increased pallets. That being said, if you're good enough with Survivor, you can still hold your own, but have to be a lot smarter about it. Keeping one killer distracted for a long time is amazing for your team because there's only so much the other killer can be doing by themselves. Sure, getting ganged up on by both killers can be really lame, but if both killers are focused on downing one person at a time, then that's 7 other survivors that could be doing generators, healing, or anything else, so it's a trade-off for the killers. They'll get quicker downs, but at the cost of like no map pressure. Generator speed is also faster, thanks to having more survivors working on them at any given time, which is just fine given how many more generators there are. Survivors need to complete 8 out of 13 generators, which feels like the perfect amount. It's easy to get the first couple gens done, but it can be really hard to finish all the final ones, so I think it's a good balance. The classes you can choose from also have really strong benefits and are great on their own. Behavior was smart enough to limit the amount of one class you can have, so you won't see every survivor being a medic or scout, which is great for the health of the game mode. With each class having their own benefits, there are so many different ways things can go, which keeps the mode interesting and fresh. There are a lot of overpowered abilities on the Survivor side, like the Medic and Guide's team abilities, but thanks to the larger gap between player skill, you won't see crazy teamwork happening between survivors. I imagine that if MMR did work in this mode, it would be a lot less fun and would really ruin the chaotic mess that makes 2v8 such a refreshing and charming way to play the game. On the flip side, Killer is immensely fun too. The game mode is so quick and fast paced. Gone are the times of carrying a survivor to a hook, having to hook them, and then slowly walking to the next guy. Instead, you pick up a survivor and instantly send them across the map to a cage. On top of that, kicking generators without perks actually does something now and can be really beneficial when playing certain killers with a lot of map control like Blight, Billy, and Wraith. Thanks to certain classes, you're almost always seeing the auras of survivors, which makes it so you almost never have to run around trying to find someone, and even if you do, there's so many survivors that it won't take long to find someone else. It's just chase after chase, and that is so much fun. You don't need to spend a ton of time looking for people like you do in the base game. That information is practically given to you. You get to spend so much of the match interacting with the survivors, which in turn makes the game more exciting for them too. All killers in this mode are stronger than they normally are, so you'll never feel like you're falling too far behind even if generators are flying by. Playing with another killer also gives a feeling that you won't get anywhere else in DBD. You no longer feel solely responsible for if you win while playing Killer. Instead, now you have someone else to blame if you lose, which is awesome. I can finally play Killer and team up with people I know are good at the game. And Scott.
Sorry, she wasn't infected. Hit her! Skrump, you suck. Chill.
There's nothing better than working with your killer ally and getting really fun insta-downs. Deathslinger and Huntress are great at this. I'll never have more fun in Dead by Daylight than I do seeing the aura of a survivor that just got hit by my teammate and then sending a hatchet into orbit to hit them. It's awesome. Almost every killer feels strong in this game mode, even Trapper. Some are weaker than others, obviously, but they feel like they've all been properly buffed to make up for the more chaotic mode. It's such a good way to play the game. It's almost perfect. Almost. That being said, behavior making the decision to replace 1 or 2 survivors with bots if the queues are too long was a massive misstep in my opinion. Bots don't really seem to know what to do against 2 killers and are hilariously bad at teamwork. I've straight up died because a bot saw a killer halfway across the map and refused to finish healing me. The bots somehow seem to be worse at pathing in 2v8 too, as they sometimes just run into the killer because the dual tear radius confuses them. It's terrible. I'd understand if the bots genuinely made queue times better, but they just don't seem to be doing that. I'm still waiting 15 plus minutes for a match as killer, and survivor queues are still instant, so clearly the issue isn't fixed because of them. If the AI of bots was better and they were good at helping teammates, I wouldn't mind as much, but it isn't, and they're not. Bots will willingly leave you if it means they can escape, which, I mean, is funny, but not necessarily healthy. I really hope they remove them when 2v8 comes back around again. I appreciate the attempt to help queue times improve, though. I just wish they wouldn't have done this. I mean, there's a lot of different things they could have done. I think adding bots to 2v8 was the worst thing they could have done. Speaking of which, the worst part of 2v8 is definitely the queues for killer. They're super long and super boring. It takes around 15 to 20 minutes to get into a game when queuing as killer, which just isn't sustainable, especially for streamers. It really sucks because you go from the incredibly fast-paced match of 2v8 to waiting an abhorrent amount of time to get into another game, which just kills the momentum and dopamine that 2v8 is really good at giving you when you are in a match. The game moves so quick, but once it's over, you know you're gonna have to wait ages to get into another game. When killer is this fun to play, but you're limited to only a few matches, it's going to lead people to getting bored and only getting in a few games. It's great that so many people want to play killer with someone else, but having queue times this long just punishes those people that want to play. It isn't Behavior's fault. I don't think even they expected the game mode to be this popular. It practically doubles the player count when it comes out, and so many people get excited when they see this mode come back. Myself included. I would spend hours upon hours playing killer and 2v8 back to back if the queues were quicker, but I only end up getting in a small handful of matches due to the queues themselves taking a quarter of an hour. I've seen some suggestions for how to make the queues better, which I think Behavior should try at the very least. Clearly the bot idea was a bust, but maybe giving more incentive for people to play Survivor is a good idea. I'm not so sure that would fix everything, but it definitely wouldn't hurt to try. Maybe having more Survivor-specific challenges in the 2v8 tome would help. Maybe adding an XP or iridescent shard bonus on top of the additional BP would be the incentive people need. Hey, they kinda did that! Poggers! I kind of feel like Behavior just needs to adapt to the additional players and work around it outside of the game. If they ever plan on making this game mode permanent, they're gonna need that additional space. I really don't envy Behavior being the people responsible for fixing this, but you have to think about how great of a problem this is to have. For years, players had a hard time playing Killer because they felt it was too stressful compared to Survivor. Now that they have a teammate to work with, and blame, there's a much bigger market of people who want to play killer with their friends. It's great because it might open up the eyes of people who don't play the killer role very much and will definitely help the community grow to be more understanding of each side. In addition, queues being so long forces some people to play Survivor, which I guess does the same thing. I've been playing this game since 2016 and I've never once seen the community collectively love something as much as we love 2v8. It's a great way to experience the game, and I'm so happy we're finally getting new modes for Dead by Daylight. We could throw tomatoes at each other every other time of the year, but when 2v8 comes out, shit gets real. It's like a different community altogether. It genuinely makes me appreciate DBD and Behavior much more because it reminds me of everything we've all been through and have to look forward to. For crying out loud, we have FNAF coming in the summer, which is gonna be absolutely crazy. I love 2v8 and Chaos Shuffle, and Lights Out is there too, I guess. I can't wait for 2v8 to come back around and grace us with its presence. Hopefully, we'll have even more killers than before. I'm personally really hoping for them to add Unknown and Oni. I think they'd be a blast to play in 2v8. Just fix the queue times, please. I don't want to have to wait 20 minutes to play killer. It's awful. Anyway, that's it for me, gamers. Have a great day. Not even wearing the new Wesker drip. SMH, man.
Is that... Bro, that shit just feels like bullshit.